Welcome to the world debut of the first ever Mack Pioneer long-haul semi-truck. Why should you care about this? Well, I'll explain all of it in this video. I'll show you all the features, tell you all the specs. We'll take it on the first drive, so let's go do it. This truck is going to be hitting the highway near you later this calendar year, so I really wanted to show it to you because it's very cool. First, starting with styling. Of course, it has a streamlined aerodynamic design because it has to for efficiency, but I think you can still tell it's a Mack truck. It's very, very likely you know this name. Mack truck has been around for 125 years. They're celebrating an anniversary this year. And that also means there's a gold bulldog right here on the hood. One of the coolest design features of this truck, I think, from the way it looks, is the windscreen. It just curves in many different directions. Of course, it's serviceable. You can replace it if it's damaged, but it's actually glued into the structure. It helps the structure of the cab, but also very sleek and aerodynamic, swept back.
One of the cool things, though, up here on the hood is actually you see all of these scoops. So we have up here, obviously, our grill. We actually have scoops down here on the side, and there's two just around the back, and every single one on here is functional.
All right, so it's not just for style.
Correct. Yeah. So obviously this is cooling. That hasn't changed. This is also for cooling. We're sending air down over the engine to help cool it. We cool our steering gear with this one. We also help cool the headlights, the LED circuit boards.
Okay.
This is our air intake for the engine on both sides.
Okay.
And then this is wrapped so tight, packaged so tight in here for aerodynamics, we actually have an exhauster port right here so that all the air that comes in has a place to escape.
So you have to see it from the other side.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a big trucker today. I don't get to do this every day, so forgive me for giggling. So I released my brake, I put it in drive. Oh, I see what Jordan was telling me. There's like 3 down arrows that kind of let me know that I have other 3 gears. It starts me in 4th. It starts me in 4th gear. So I've driven several brand new semi-trucks, and usually the automated manual transmission can have a large pause while you're accelerating or just doing any types of shifting. But Mack truck tells me that they improved this one, the speed of shifting, by about 30% compared to the previous automated manual transmission they had on, for example, the Anthem semi-truck as well. Okay, so my seat is aired up a little bit. I'm sitting a little bit higher. I can adjust the height of it. Of course, everything is cushioned. So my cab is mounted with airbags. I have air suspension. I have to slow down here, I think. There's a 20 mile an hour. This is Mack truck testing area, testing facility here in Pennsylvania, in Allentown. Now let me see if I can accelerate. This is a 12-speed. There's several transmissions available, but this is a 12-speed automated manual, which means it still has clutch or clutches, but I'm not doing any shifting myself. The computer is doing the shifting for me. And I can kind of tell, I don't know if you could notice kind of the pause in RPM. That's basically the computer shifting gears. Let me make this run. And I have great visibility. So I have digital mirrors. I have actual physical mirrors because those have to be there by regulation. And I'm not speeding around this track, and I'm not drifting today. This is my first drive opportunity, and there's a speed limit at this test track, so I have to observe certain rules still, even though this is a private area. This is not necessarily in public, and I'm not pulling a trailer. All right, let me accelerate. Let's go, this is sport mode. No, it's mostly about economy, efficiency, durability, longevity. That's what semi-trucks are about. But they're becoming a lot more usable for almost an everyday driver. Of course, you have to have a CDL, a commercial driver's license. But if you're driving your pickup truck or an SUV or a crossover or a car, and you come across into this truck, I think you'll be very pleased with how the steering handles, the suspension design. I don't think I can get the full sense of it. I'm not fully loaded, and I'm also not going very, very fast. And there's also a new steering feature in this truck that I'll show you in a second. If you know anything about semi-trucks, you might imagine there are going to be latches out here somewhere on the driver's side and the passenger side to actually open the hood, but not on the new Pioneer. This truck is fairly unique. It has several distinct features, and one of them is that the hood release latch is underneath here by the driver's left foot, and when you pull it, both latches on both sides open, and now you can open the hood. So how do you open the hood? Well, actually, the Bulldog, the mascot of the entire company, is also a hood handle. So you can kind of go like this, open it. It doesn't take that much force, just a little bit of practice. And then you unveil this. This is the MP13. It's basically a 13-liter inline six turbo diesel engine. There are several power ratings on this engine, several turbocharged design. This one you see here has a variable geometry turbo, and the power ratings are such: upwards of 515 horsepower and the most powerful configuration, and also up to 1,950 pound-feet of torque, which is really near the top of any long-haul semi-truck.
Now, some of the big changes that we made to this versus its predecessor are we have a variable pressure oil pump.
Okay.
To help with parasitic loss. So basically, just as the load on the engine changes, we up the pressure. We up the pressure as we need, but then when we're in idle or low load state, we back that down a little bit. We have a new connecting rod and piston design. So we've actually made our piston a little bit shorter and our connecting rod a little bit longer. And that might seem a little bit odd, but the big reason we did that was to reduce extra forces in the engine. So typically you have a lot of force where the piston pushes on the side of the cylinder. Mm-hmm. By changing that geometry, we were actually able to lessen that by about 6%. So again, we're talking about small percentages here, but it's that much more energy that we can then put back to the tires to move the truck.
And efficiencies, right? You're gaining small efficiencies in many different places.
Correct.
But it kind of adds up.
Correct.
It adds up together.
Yep. Now, again, this is the VGT engine, but we did change our turbocharger on our HE engine. We actually made it a little bit smaller. We did that to reduce turbo lag, so we don't have to wait as long for it to spool up. With that engine being geared for downspeeding and running 900, 1,000 RPM, we don't need a big turbocharger. We have our variable speed coolant pump. Now, that's actually a carryover from our current engine that we have in our Anthem. And again, that's all about parasitic loss. If we don't need to cool the truck, why run the coolant pump at full speed? You can see that this is a very well packaged setup. There's a lot of things in a tight space, and again, we're doing that partly for that aerodynamic design. We have the engine up under the cowling back against the firewall pretty well.
Is this like the heater core?
Yep. So those are your heater core lines going up into the cab.
Okay.
A lot of things on this engine and this truck are not going to be that much different than you would see on any other OE. For a big rig, or even if you looked at medium duty or light duty that utilized an inline six, a lot of things are going to be in very similar places.
You have a sister company, Volvo.
Correct.
Right? Can you tell me a little bit about how that relationship works? Where do you guys share some of the technologies, or, what's kind of unique sometimes?
So this platform...
For Powertrain?
Yeah, so this platform is shared between both brands. We have some small differences between them. Anybody who's familiar with the two brands will notice right off the bat our horsepower ratings are a little bit different. As a really easy example, Volvo has 500 horsepower, whereas we have 515. or 505 for our high efficiency engine, whereas there's still 500. So there's some small differences, but the base engine, everything that you're kind of looking at here is shared between the two companies. We make them in the same facility in Hagerstown, Maryland.
Okay.
More or less side by side. They're dynoed side by side. So they're very, very similar. That does obviously help with some serviceability because now you don't have unique parts to one brand versus the other. That always creates a challenge.
Economy of scale, really.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it helps. It helps with like you said, economies of scale. It helps with serviceability. Helps our dealerships, and helps the customers too when they need a part. Because while there is a Mack part, there is a Volvo part that will do the same job, fit the same way.
Just like with any pickup truck, there's thousands, maybe many thousands of different optional features that you could either have on this new Pioneer semi-truck or not have it. For example, you can have a physical key if you don't want to push button start. It also has this remote lock unlock, so actually pretty hefty. I like this. This is the whole image of Mack. Reliability, longevity. The company's been around for 125 years. These trucks are American made. Their powertrains are built by the same company, Mack Power MP13. So there's a whole story about longevity. So this is one way you can actually get this truck. There is an infotainment screen here. It's a touch screen. You can have a variety of different options, including tire pressure monitoring systems, camera systems. Also, you can configure your command steer system, and this will have different settings when the truck is powered up and ready to drive. I'm inside a studio right now, so I can't really start the engine. Then over here, there's a variety of buttons on this side. This is what they call grade gripper or hill hold assist. There's a driver attention warning system. This is a Max version of it. Basically, if it detects you swerving or maybe behaving as if you were tired or distracted, it will remind you. This is kind of a lane keep assist system, blind spot monitoring system, adaptive cruise control system, and also an ability for you to move your fifth wheel, dump air, a lot of different features. I mean, I don't know this very in high detail. We could spend minutes and hours and days describing all the configurations, but you could see there's many auxiliary switches that are blank. There's also auxiliary switches which you could wire. There's also additional cameras you could plug in to have your trailer cameras, or maybe inside your trailer or behind your trailer. You can plug it in and also monitor everything right here on the same screen. Or you can get just an empty space, and if your fleet or if you have a custom solution, you can also plug in custom solutions in here and still have 12-volt power. So 12-volt power is available here in the cab, even though the chassis is running on 24 volts. Running on 24 volts, I really like that this truck offers that, because you could actually decrease the diameter of your electrical wires and actually put more. It's easier to route wires, it reduces cost, reduces heat. So as soon as you can raise the voltage of your system, you can control different sensors, you can get data. So it just improves a lot of things. And they went through that system on this truck. You can get up to 6 12-volt batteries on this driver's side. Here they're mounted below the cabin, and they're wired to run 12 volt for some of the accessories or 24 volt for the engine. And there's also an ultra capacitor, an actual capacitor, not a battery, that kickstarts this engine to life, this big 13-liter straight six. Can you explain to me like some of the new things you've done, or some of the changes you created?
Yeah, basically everything you are looking at is new. We have a new instrument cluster. It's all digital. We have a new dash layout here, new switches, new radio. If you want to adjust the pedal, we use a foot pedal over, since our transmission is an automated manual, we don't have a clutch pedal. So there's a pedal on the left-hand side over by the kick panel. And to adjust the wheel, you actually push that pedal down.
Gotcha.
But there's actually a cool new feature that we have now where you let up halfway on the pedal, and typically you'll hear trying to think of the word, an air release.
Okay.
When you hit that point, you're actually able to tilt the steering wheel itself. So instead of just being 2 position, now we actually have 3 adjustable positions.
Okay, gotcha. You have your air brake controllers here.
So that is actually something brand new for us. So these, while they look similar, that you have your normal parking and trailer brakes, these are no longer pneumatic in the cab. This is actually electronically controlled to a manifold and a computer down on the frame rail. So there's no more air lines running into the dash, no worries of leaks, anything like that. This actually gives some cool new functions too, because we are controlling it through the computer. In terms of safety, just convenience, we can do some different things now, and it's a lot easier to operate. I mean, anybody who's familiar with those, sometimes you'd have to press pretty hard to release them. So you don't have to worry about hurting your fingers or anything like that anymore for people who are unfamiliar or new drivers or anything like that.
This truck still has the CB, and that's really cool.
You can still get a CB if you like. Yeah, we have not gotten rid of that. I think a lot of people will still view that as the heart/voice of the truck.
Now, something that's kind of obvious, when we're sitting here, we got digital mirrors and actual physical mirrors as well.
Yep. So this is an option that you can put on the truck, our digital mirror system.
Yeah.
So those are cameras that are mounted up above the doors in little, we call them wings. But the cool part with these is, they obviously are a high resolution screen. They have infrared for at night. And you still have your setup with a traditional mirror and then convex view. When you are driving, there are actually lines that will appear on here too to show how far vehicles or objects are from
depth perception kind
of from the end of the vehicle. So you can say, you have a better view for safe passing, safe lane changes, things of that nature. And then, as you said, we still have the physical mirrors on the doors themselves. That is a requirement of us and they are the smallest.
Yeah, they're still regulated.
Yep, they're the smallest that we can put on there. One cool thing about this, moreover, the great view, the good high def screen, is the fact that with this setup you get about 1.5% better aerodynamics, better efficiency. So it does actually make a big dent in terms of your fuel bill just by adding this option, because we cut down on all that drag. 1.5, because we cut down on all that drag that the larger mirrors would normally create.
Now those are the cameras and the wings that we're talking about.
Yes. And you can see this side, we're on the passenger side, that has 2 cameras. So one actually looks rearward and then the other actually looks downward. You see a lot of trucks where they have
kind of a blind area for the driver.
Yeah,
right?
You'll see a lot of trucks where they have a mirror right there. You can actually see where we have a prep there in our door. Where we could put a mirror, or you can use the camera.
The camera to look down.
Right. There is quite a bit going on with this truck. So, I mean, we can just even start here at the steering wheel. So a lot of these are going to be more of your convenience items, like on the left-hand side there. That's cruise control, your cruise control set.
Lane centering.
This is actually your adjustable time gap to the car in front of you. Your downhill cruise. So if you maybe aren't using your regular cruise, but you're going through hilly terrain and you just want to make sure you don't overspeed going down a hill, then you could set that one and it'll use the engine brake to hold you back automatically. Then we come down here, you have volume control, voice activation.
For your phone connection.
Correct. Okay. And then over here, these are all the controls for your instrument cluster, what we call co-pilot in the center there, where you get all your information. You can see, like, top left, we have our light indicator and temperature up there. Mm-hmm. Below that is our battery, and we actually now offer that where it can display not just the voltage, but the voltage and the amperage. Now this is a 24-volt truck, so it takes a little bit of getting used to when you see it and you're charging at 25, 26 volts instead of your standard 13 or 14.
It may catch you off guard initially.
Yeah, but it's charging. It works exactly the same. Nothing's changed other than essentially the numbers in terms of when you're looking at that gauge.
Can you explain it a little bit? Like, why move from like 12 volts to 24?
Power is voltage times amperage. So if we're able to increase the volts, we reduce the amperage. If we reduce the amperage, we reduce the wire sizes that are needed. We also reduce the amount of heat that's generated in all the wires. So moving that way gives us more flexibility with how we can source wires, how we can route them through the chassis, through the cab, because we don't need as large of gauge wiring as we used to. But we have our primary and secondary air tanks.
Yes.
So that our pressure's in there. Below that, we have our range for our fuel, and you can see that that is actually both giving us a gauge and the range in the same area. Then we have our odometer below that in the bottom left corner. Dead center, we have our speedometer at the top. Now, if the truck was running, this would either show a tachometer, a digital tachometer in the middle for your RPM, or it could display GPS. It could display your time gap, your distance to the car in front of you. Actually, to the right of the speedometer, you'll see it looks like a little speed sign up in the right corner there. So that is our speed sign detection. That is using the camera. It's looking to see what you're passing. We can actually display up to 3 signs at a time, with the ability to display a 4th kind of as an upcoming sign. This is new for us. You want to call it a rotating
selector,
end. Yeah. Our selector for drive, neutral, and reverse. And you can see when we put it in reverse, we will get a camera with this setup. And then we also have our engine brake as part of it. So that is like you're actuating a turn signal. So all the way up is off. And then as we pull down, we get stronger engine brake. Finally, when we get to the bottom, we have a temporary position. You can see it springs back. And what happens there is we're not just turning the engine brake on. We are telling the transmission we want it to downshift so that we can, get the revs up, use that compression brake and the exhaust brake in conjunction to slow this thing down as quick as we can. Then what we also have, and it's probably a little bit hard to see just with the angle, but over here it says pull and push. So this is what we would call our premium shifter. So you can have manual control of the gears you're in, and on the end we have a little button you would press, and it says MA on it for manual or auto. You'd press that, and then you can pull and push. Oops, it's kind of hard to do from this angle.
Yeah.
You can pull it or push it, and that'll either upshift or downshift depending on what you want to do. And one of the cool things is if you look at the instrument cluster there, down towards the bottom, it says N and N2. Now that would be our gear. So it'll tell you the gear you're in, but it'll also display little like chevrons next to it going up or down. That'll tell you as the driver how many available upshifts or downshifts you have. So if you felt you needed to really downshift to get some power, it would tell you, hey, you can downshift 2 gears. You're not going to hurt it. You're not going to break anything.
You have the RPM range.
The truck's telling you it's safe to do it, so you could just pull it towards you twice, or a downshift, you want to push it away from you twice, and it'll take off and go.
And tell me about the transmission choices, or is it just one, or... So how does that work?
You get our M drive, our automated manual. That is the only option, but that does come in 12, 13, or 14 speeds. Now, the 12 speed is our traditional over-the-road transmission. Our 13 and 14 speeds add a low gear and a double low gear. So you think of some of the older manuals, they have very, very low ratios. Yeah. That's what the 13 and the 14 speed do. And we use those to our advantages, like when we want to down speed, we want to use fast rear axle ratios and to help with our startability. Now, we also offer it as a standard duty and a heavy duty. So standard duty, that's what's going to come as standard. That's good for maybe about 120,000 pounds. So it's pretty flexible within the market. But the heavy duty has reinforced synchronizers in it. It has a heavier duty case. We beef up the heat treatment on the gearing. So it's meant to take more weight. So if you were doing some heavy haul, 140, 150, 160, that would be the go-to choice. So one of the big things that we have now is we have a really nice infotainment setup here. We have actually our command steer. So if it was on, we would have this, but so command steer is our torque overlay on the steering. On the steering wheel. So
there's a little electric assist?
Yep. So there's an electric motor that goes on top of the steering box itself, and that's able to put up to about 8 foot-pound of torque in to help you with the road feel. And that is looking at the steering input 2,000 times a second. but we have an option for personal settings where we can actually adjust the feel of that. We have like responsive, light, where responsive, it's like you're driving a sports car. Not too heavy of a wheel, but it definitely responds very well. Light, think of somebody in an urban environment, or you're backing into a dock, you're doing a lot of turning, you don't want a heavy steering wheel, you just want to be able to turn. So you can actually make those adjustments, and one of the places you can do it, depending on how the truck is spec'd, is right here. That's one of my favorite things in here.
So here's how command steering system works. It has a mechanical hydraulic steering pump like a normal truck would have, but then on top of it, it has an electric, I call it overlay, but it's basically an electric motor that can help, first of all, with feeling of the steering wheel, but it also does a couple of other things, like it's now upgraded to 24 volts. This chassis runs on 24 volts, which has many benefits that I'll tell you later, but also can do this. It can monitor your steering input up to 2,000 times a second and help you out. So, Jordan, how do I do this? About 10 miles an hour?
Put 15 in there and just dump off the curb, and you'll see that the steering wheel doesn't move in your hand.
Okay, but normally it would...
Normally you think of your car, it would yank you over.
Yeah.
But not with the command steer. That holds it steady.
So the command steering feature also helps, not just if you're hitting a curb, I don't know, at 15 miles an hour like I just tried, but for example, you have a blowout or a flat tire that you're experiencing while moving, and before the driver can actually react to it, the steering system will also react actually before a human can, and kind of keep the truck hopefully steady and straight. So it's just safer, and safety is a huge part of it too, not just efficiency, but safety. Driver safety is very important, and the surrounding environment safety as well.
All right, let's talk suspension now.
So this is our new Max ride. Now, I say new because it is new to North America, but this is. Something that has been used on Mack Australia for actually quite a few years, just because of its durability. So you can see it's an 8-bag suspension, and we're attached in here.
So you could kind of see there's one airbag here. Mm-hmm.
And
another one in the
bag.
Front. Okay.
And if we didn't have the tires on, you would actually be able to see that the front airbag for this axle and the rear airbag for the first drive axle are slightly larger than the outer airbags. And that's because those are basically the load supporting bags.
These guys.
Yeah, these bags down in here.
Yeah.
Those are more of the load supporting bags versus these on the outer are kind of like a jounce bag. They're there to absorb that extra vibration when you're going down the road. This is a very heavy-duty, well-riding suspension. We have a sway bar, an optional sway bar on the front axle. That comes with this suspension outright. So then you get
this guy.
Yep. Right. And you have that on each axle.
Okay.
So this truck hugs the road like a sports car.
So it prevents it from kind of trying to twist sideways, basically.
So, you have a trailer on here. Obviously, as you're going around turns and whatnot, the trailer wants to...
Especially if it's kind of really... Center of gravity could be high.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So as it's trying to sway, those are going to resist it, which, for anybody who has driven a big rig before, they do sometimes feel like they're kind of wandering all over the place. But with this suspension...
Or if you're coming in too hot, that's why you have those road signs. Suggested speed for an off-ramp, for example, or because that's real stuff.
Yeah, it's easy for high center of gravity to start tilting and go too far. Now, this doesn't prevent that, but it takes some of that feel out of the cab, out of the driver's seat. Advantage to this suspension is the fact that it is what we would call non-torque reactive. So, anybody who's familiar with use leaf spring suspension as an example. Mm-hmm. When you get on the throttle, the axle wants to twist, and usually you see the rear of a car or a truck lift up. Yeah. This does not allow that. So, when that happens, obviously you can get some axle hop where the tires, they start chirping down the road.
Chattering.
Yep. This prevents that. We're supporting it on the bottom with the big bars that are holding the bags. And then we have tie rods in the center to hold it. And then in the back here, we have these big V-stay rods that hold the top. So the axle is actually held in place. It's not permitted to to turn. And then with the geometry of the suspension, one thing that you may notice if you look at the shock is that the shock is almost perfectly vertical, which is not something that you see very often on air suspensions. Usually they're close, but this is very, very close to vertical. And that's because with the geometry, when we're hitting bumps, the suspension's essentially moving the axle vertically. We don't have an arc, or as much of an arc as you would with a traditional air suspension.
And is this an optional piece? So you can get it with or without this?
Correct. So this is an optional suspension. Again, like I said, this is a little bit heavier duty of a suspension, but the ride is phenomenal on it. We do offer another proprietary suspension, what we call our Mack Light. That is a lightweight air suspension. That is actually going to be a carryover from our Anthem today. And we also offer Hendrickson's HAS suspension. It's actually a version of the HAS, I should say. We call it the Mack AL. That has been around for years. But that's a tried and true suspension that a lot of our customers love. Been around for decades at this point. And that's kind of the in-between. It's good riding. It's lightweight. It can take a little bit more abuse, just say if the truck would end up having to go off-road just a little bit. Now, obviously, long-haul trucks not going off-road much, but...
Dirt lots or something.
Yeah, dirt lots, things like that. It can take a little bit more abuse. And then this is kind of the king in terms of
the flagship kind of?
Yeah. This is the one that will definitely, I think, turn some heads in terms of what you think about ride quality on a semi-truck.
So right now my brake is enabled. This is my parking brake in yellow, and of course the trailer air supply also in red. But the new technology features in these trucks, including the new Pioneer, there's a couple of tricks to the system. So if I put it in drive and I let go of the brake pedal, my parking brake is released, so the truck is ready. There's also I call it hill hold assist, and you call it
Grade gripper.
Grade gripper. Say that 3 times fast. That feature we'll demonstrate in a second, but now I can just pull away. But let's say I put it in neutral and I did not pull my brake and I unbuckle my seatbelt, it already turned my brake on for me because it's thinking I'm about to leave. So it's another safety reminder, safety feature of this truck, which is very important. All right, now let's do the Grade gripper really fast. Put it in drive, release, the brake is already ready. Once again, starts me out in 4th gear, and I have a lot of options. Now we're approaching a 15% grade. In order to demonstrate it, I just stop in the middle of it, right?
Where the white line is.
Alright, so it just downshifted for me because I'm moving very, very slowly up quite a steep grade. Now that's the 3rd gear. Okay, I'm full stopped. Basically, the idea is I don't want to roll backwards on a very steep grade. So my parking brake is released, my service brake I'm going to release, and it's not rolling forward. And I'm applying a little bit of accelerator. It's starting me out in 3rd gear. Bam! Good. Never rolled backwards. Pretty safe. So just an additional feature that can come in useful. Even if a dummy with a CDL like me can drive this truck easily, just jumping into it right off the bat, then the technology is there to support me, and it works pretty well. So that's kind of the whole point, is make it accessible, more people. There's a driver shortage over the last several years. It's accessible to more drivers, more people can get their CDLs, more people can get involved.
A semi-truck like this, it's not just a working machine, it's also a home for the driver and maybe the co-driver that may be in this truck. As such, it has to be comfortable. And I gotta say, I'm continued to be pleasantly surprised in many different new sleeper cabs like this. And the Pioneer is no exception. So, first of all, there's a ton of headroom. I am almost 6'3", and I can be very comfortable, not claustrophobic at all. This is the highest roof option, once again. Now, you have a bed down here, which is a Murphy style bed. You have different cubbies. You have 12 volt power inside, USB-Cs right here. You have little hangers. You have your radio controls. You have lights. You have a speaker stereo system. I mean, it's a full house. You also have a bunk bed up here. It's attached to the ceiling, and there's also an expandable ladder that you can move down and get on top and sleep. There are little windows on the driver's side, so you have a little bit of actually air or just light, natural light if you want it. You have LED light. You have an ability to store a lot of things. It can have actually a refrigerator, wireless chargers. It's very, very modern. There's a space for a microwave. You can have an inverter installed, included in the truck, so you can actually run some of these 115 volt or 120 volt outlets in here. Or if you plugged into shore power, this truck will also be powered and power all of your accessories all at once. Also, climate control system. It's very important for efficiency of the engine. You could park the truck. There's several conditions that have to be made, and then there is a system called integrated park climate control. So you can actually condition the vehicle using an electric compressor that uses kind of the same coolant lines and same vents around the cab to actually condition the cab while the truck is actually powered off, and it's using the electric power in the batteries. Or on the flip side, for heat, there's also a diesel burning little heater that uses a diesel in the truck, and it warms up the coolant inside the engine and also the coolant in the heater core for the heat inside. So you can maintain your engine, keep it a little bit warmer while the engine is off, and also keep the cabin nice and warm on a very cold winter night while you're staying somewhere. So it has quite a few fancy and also optional systems. If you don't want some of those systems, you don't have to get them. What I learned from Mack here, just after being here for just several hours, is that Mack obviously has their own style. They have also an angle for reliability. You may pay a small premium for that. I don't know what that premium is, but you can get a little bit more horsepower than a Volvo. You can have a unique experience here inside the cab. So those small elements, all of them really matter. And in the end, you get a super capable truck that should be at the top of efficiency just in general. How durable it is, I mean, I think we have to wait and see, like the saying goes. And if you want to know how much these trucks are, the best I can do for you right now, since the truck is not on sale even yet, you can actually go and contact your local Mack dealer for pricing. It depends on how many trucks you're buying, one or many. The pricing will matter or change for that. It matters what options you're getting, which options you're not getting. So the pricing can vary. But what I'm picking up here, it's kind of a little bit more premium experience. You get many different options that you can choose, and you have additional horsepower, a little bit of additional capability, also heavy duty options with different transmission gears, and also heavy suspension systems that make this a comfortable truck to drive, and hopefully a truck that you can drive for 1,000,000 miles before major rebuilds. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you want to see more with semi-trucks? Should we actually put them on the iGauntlet World's Toughest Towing Test, or maybe efficiency testing, compare some semis? If there's a huge push from you guys, then maybe we can make it happen. Once again, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.